Captain Midnight.
This video will contain spoilers of a new version of a 3,000-year-old poem. I have seen Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey twice now, and while I really enjoyed myself both times, I'll admit that in my first go-around, I was pretty thrown off by Matt Damon's take on Odysseus. The version of this character that I have in my head, which I admit is like a hazy mixture of growing up with storybook versions of his tale and reading the Robert Fagel's Odyssey translation in school, was of a charming, clever king who, at least initially, approached life with a real sense of cunning and adventure. And while that inventiveness is definitely present in this Odysseus, Nolan's version is much more in line with the kind of leads that he tends to favor in his movies. Tortured men haunted by regret. And after a second viewing, I really think that taken on its own terms, it really pays off. Because I haven't stopped thinking about that last hour of the Odyssey since watching it. So that's really what I wanted to talk about this week. This interpretation of Odysseus and why that ending works as well as it does. There's a moment fairly early on in the Odyssey where Odysseus' wife Penelope speaks to her son Telemachus about the increasing attacks from the Sea People, a mysterious force that seems to be spreading, leaving destruction and ruin in their wake. Telemachus seems unbothered. They have the greatest civilization ever known to man. What could possibly be a threat to that? Penelope knows better. She understands how fragile it is. She's seen the decades of decline, exemplified by the suitors in her own home. She says, "Look at this great house. Stones as old as knowledge at the mercy of some greedy, unwanted guests. The structure's nothing without people's respect for its meaning." What Penelope doesn't know is that her husband, still alive and in some far-off land, believes the exact same thing, and holds himself personally responsible. Like J. Robert Oppenheimer in Nolan's last movie, Odysseus becomes an important cog in a vast war machine, did something unheard of in an effort to end the war, and now has to live with the consequences, creating a destructive force that he believes will impact the lives of everyone he knows. Of course, in Oppenheimer, that force, the bomb, is much more literal and immediate. It's something that very obviously heightened the risk of warfare forever and changed geopolitics. In the Odyssey, the force is a bit more abstract, but it still haunts Odysseus' thoughts. Chris Nolan has spoken at length on the press tour for this movie about this concept found in the source material called Xenia. And it's this that provides the backbone for his Odysseus and what he fears he's unleashed. Nolan said, "What fuels the film? You have this concept of Xenia, which we refer to as Zeus's law, the theological underpinning of the Golden Rule. The idea, treat others as you would be treated, that being the glue that binds society together." Zeus's law is invoked a lot in this movie, and I think it's very meaningful that when it is, it's basically never in good faith. Even when people are abiding by the letter of the law, they're abusing it in spirit. The suitors and their minions flaunt it as a justification for everything they do, even as they treat their hosts with contempt, who in turn become suspicious and hostile to their guests. Nolan is a very systems and technology-obsessed director, and the movie seems to view Zeus's law as a piece of societal infrastructure. In this world, people survive by trusting that strangers will honor this code of hospitality. Things like trade, travel, and diplomacy are only possible because everyone acts as if the stranger they meet could be a god in a cloak. In theory, it should let these communities interact without annihilating one another. Odysseus takes advantage of Zeus's law and spends years dealing with the consequences. We see how the villagers burn their own home in fear of people from the sea, a force we come to understand to be the now degraded and lawless veterans of Agamemnon's war. And it creates this world where Zeus's law has failed and hospitality has been replaced by the expectation of violence almost everywhere. As early as Odysseus' first stop on their journey home, his civilization already seems to be crumbling, even if that hasn't totally become apparent yet. That's because Zeus's law is built on trust, and it's Odysseus who owns its most brutal and brazen violation. before we get there, it's probably worth spending some time on the trust that his men put in him. I love the scene in Hades, shot on the black beaches of Iceland. I feel like in most Hollywood blockbusters, a trip to the underworld would involve giant computer-generated hellish landscapes, but Nolan keeps it extremely simple and stark, lingering on the endless rows of Odysseus's dead soldiers. Sinon gives a voice to all those who are killed, bringing his plans to fruition. It's clear Odysseus cares about his men, but he also treats them as a calculation, a resource that he protects, but also one that has to be traded and sometimes discarded in service of their ultimate goal. Now, that comes with the territory of military leadership, but it is ugly and it requires him to abuse their trust, which in this world is kind of the ultimate currency. And then there's Agamemnon, who has already returned to that world that he and Odysseus created through their actions, and warns him that the home he returns to won't be as welcoming as he expects. It's a haunting scene, and it shoves in Odysseus's face that the choices he's made have forever altered his relationship with the society he lives in and the one that will arrive long after he's gone. There is no escaping what he's done. It's no wonder then that the movie has him question if he actually deep down wants to go home. From the moment he sacked Troy, that fear was there. I think that makes for a really fascinating recontextualization of his trickster personality. Nolan's Odysseus doesn't revel in his own cleverness or reach desperately for newfound glory, and I can see why a lot of people would claim that that's too much of a change to who the character is. I am sympathetic to that, but I also think the Odysseus that we're presented with here is a very compelling figure. Now, I've seen some people say that the movie transforms the character into yet another soldier who goes to war just to realize that, war is bad, actually. And I just think that's an overly simple reading. What Odysseus is dealing with from the moment we meet him is a lot more specific and interesting than that. The sacking of Troy, split across a few different scenes in the timeline of the movie, is one of the best sequences in any Nolan movie ever, full stop. I really loved how it makes for a great action set piece when we see the men descending from the horse and attempting to open the gates. It's really edge of your seat stuff. The build up to Agamemnon standing at the entrance as waves of his soldiers rush past him, only to later revisit it with a completely different tone, as Odysseus realizes exactly what he's done. And the revelation of Zendaya's Athena having been the face of a woman that he saw executed at the hands of his army is such a simple and elegant bit of storytelling that I could easily look past some of the film's dialogue being a little clunky in places, which, let's be real, isn't unusual for Nolan's films. Christopher Nolan has also had a strained relationship with the more fantastical and supernatural aspects of the worlds that he adapts. He prefers a more grounded approach to just about everything. So while things like the Cyclops and Scylla are here, and I really liked their moments, they are overall a bit minimized in the story, and their designs have a very viscerally tactile, like primal quality to them. But that still leaves the gods, who, of course, have a very important role to play in Homer's tale. And Nolan has them playing it mostly off-screen, apart from Athena. Transposing her onto this woman from Troy in Odysseus's mind, I think really allows the film to have its cake and eat it too. Is she literally Athena taking a form he'll recognize? Is she a personification of his inner thoughts, forever changed by what he saw that day? It takes these gods and reframes them as a force lurking in the back of his mind. I think this reinterpretation works really well for this take on the character. And when it's revealed during Odysseus's confession to Penelope after being away for decades, it really hits like a sledgehammer. Matt Damon's performance here is not what I expected going in. More quiet and reserved in a way that I don't associate with Odysseus, and I think he's able to make his interpretation of the character really worthy in its own right. He plays Odysseus with wary authority and emotional restraint. You get the sense that he's barely holding himself together even when he has to project leadership. I think your mileage will vary, but he feels like the ultimate Nolan lead to me. A man that's at once utterly obsessed and dedicated to a project that he's also haunted by doubts and regrets about. The film ends on a lingering shot of the Trojan horse. No longer does it feel like a monument to Odysseus' genius. It's become this symbol of what broke his world. The method with which he, maybe without realizing it, created the sea people that are now in the process of tearing down everything he cared about and ushering in a less trusting, more bloodthirsty age. This is not some definitive retelling of the Odyssey, and I can see how that would bother some people. But I do think it's a great Nolan film, and the culmination of the themes and ideas that he's been interrogating throughout his entire career. Matt Damon's Odysseus is the key to all of that, an ancient hero seen through the lens of a director who has always been fascinated by guilt and regret. So, there's very few characters that have had as much of a rough go of it as Odysseus, but between bus accidents, bombs, and plane crashes, the cast of Grey's Anatomy might give him a run for his money. That's why my latest episode of Showrunners is on Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton producer Shonda Rhimes. A major force in TV, she went from writing a panned Britney Spears movie to being the biggest production powerhouse in television. I think it's a fascinating story and one worth exploring. There's also an episode on Rod Serling, the creator of The Twilight Zone, and Vince Gilligan, creator of Breaking Bad, with every installment of Showrunners diving into the people behind some of the most influential series in TV history. If you haven't seen it yet, now's the perfect time to start. You can watch Showrunners right now exclusively on Nebula, where it lives alongside exclusive videos from creators like Lindsay Ellis, Nando V Movies, and other shows like CinemaStix's Let's Rewind. There's over 200 creators on Nebula now, and it's only growing. You'll also get all my regular videos on there ad-free. You can get 50% off an annual membership, just $30 for the whole year or $250 a month. Head to go.nebula.tv/captainmidnight, use the QR code on screen, or click the link below to watch the Shonda Rhimes episode right now.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.